It's wonderful to be here today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm joined by five panelists, friends of ours who go to universities in the States. So we'll just go through some quick self-introductions, starting with Adrian.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Adrian. I'm senior at Pomona College. I'm a double major in physics and economics.
Hi, my name is Elaine. I'm a junior at University of Virginia studying economics and history.
Hi, I'm Anya. I go to Boston University and I'm a junior and I major in biomedical engineering.
Hi, I'm Shreya. I'm a sophomore at Brown and I'm studying computational biology.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben. I'm currently a sophomore at UPenn studying computer science and network engineering.
Thank you so much. So we'll start with a round of questions tailored to students in their freshman and sophomore years of high school, beginning with Anya. So what did you do during your summers, Anya, given that there aren't often that many opportunities, especially for freshmen and sophomores?
After my sophomore year, I did a pre-college program at Columbia University, which was focused on biomedical engineering, which is what I'm currently majoring in. And it was a really great experience because it exposed me to the subject of what biomedical engineering is. And had I not participated in that course, I would have never been introduced to it, nor would I be currently pursuing it in college.
Wonderful. And speaking of developing interests, Ben, you were a leader of your school's Model United Nations Club. How important was MUN in kind of building that college resume as well as helping you develop interests and passions over high school?
Yeah, definitely. So I participated in MUN through all 4 years of my high school. And throughout that time, I was able to become a leader of our school's MUN club as well as an organizer of the Hong Kong's largest inter-school MUN conference. And both those experiences definitely shaped my college experiences now as well as my portfolio. So through MUN, I've become a much more confident public speaker. I've developed my leadership skills, and I've also met a lot of great friends. For example, Yash and I were both our high school's leaders at MUN. So it's definitely a great opportunity to develop some of those relationships as well.
Great, thank you. So speaking of developing leadership, Elaine, how do I develop my leadership? Especially as a freshman, I can't really be a leader of a club. But suppose I'm aspiring to club leadership in junior, senior year. How do I go about that?
I think a good way to start would be to look at the opportunities that your respective schools offer and to see what sort of interests align with those clubs. And through expressing your interest by being committed to these clubs, you can show the leadership in the club that you're very committed and that you eventually want to be a leader as well. So the way that happened for me was I was very intrigued in Z Club at school, which is also something that we had in common. And through committing myself and putting in hours of work and effort through going to these activities, I eventually became the vice president in my senior year.
So I guess related to that, how many clubs should I be thinking of joining? Especially if I want to be a leader in a couple of them.
I mean, I don't really think there's a magic number for how many clubs would look the best. I would just say look to your own passions and your own interests to kind of see and examine which ones you want to commit the most to. And through that, I think it becomes very clear which ones you will eventually, be more committed to and have more involvement in, and then be a leader in.
Great, thank you. So Adrian, how many hours should I be sleeping each night?
That's a very good question. So to start off, I did not get HKIS. I actually went to boarding school in the States, so actually I had a lot more time to sleep. I would recommend 8 or 9 hours a night. Really helps with your growth, helps you focus in class. At least that helped me a lot. Rule of thumb, 8 or 9 hours, just as much as you can. Just really gets you going the next day.
Did any of us get 8 hours of sleep during high school? Yeah, so I got about 7. I'm up to 8 in college though, so that's a positive.
HKIS is still a great school though.
Yeah, great place. All right, so Shreya, you also didn't go to HKIS, you went to German Swiss. How did you go about gathering university information at school, especially starting from freshman year?
So what I found most useful was to attend school talks. So these were mostly held by alumni or current students of the universities. And they often had really good information that you could not normally obtain online. So they would really they would really clearly state, their university was really good, they really enjoyed studying at that particular university, but also they would be really clear about the negatives of studying there. So that gave me a clear indication of whether I would want to study there myself. Also, with regards to, visiting colleges, I would say they're a good way of determining whether you like the environment of the campus. But they're also not necessary because it is a lot of money to visit the US and the UK, and it also takes some time. So if you want to replace visiting colleges, I would recommend, going on their websites and really trying to get as much of a feel of what it would be like to be a student there.
Great, thank you so much. So we're going to move into a round of questions now targeted toward juniors. And I'll begin with Ben. So Ben, you're studying engineering and computer science at UPenn, something that I'm sure a lot of people aspire to do. So what do you think helped you gain admission to University of Pennsylvania? And what would be your advice to people who are trying to stand out in their college applications?
Yeah, I think that's a very excellent question. So I think the biggest thing I did that maybe helped me gain admission into engineering was the summer before my senior year. I was able to speak with my physics teacher and get in contact with the chemistry professor at the University of Hong Kong. And through him, I was able to shadow his graduate students for a few weeks, as well as get my hands on some of the chemistry research that was going on at the time. And not only was I able to obviously put that into my college application, I also gained a lot of experience in something I was interested in, and that is science at a university level. And that helped me reconfirm that I really did want to do engineering in college, and I think that's something that really helped me stand out.
Thank you, Ben. So kind of sticking with that idea of internships and summer schools, Anya, what would be your advice in terms of what I should be doing over summer? You spoke earlier about how you'd done summer school. So is that what you would suggest for students as well, or would you have other suggestions too?
I think summer school is a great opportunity to explore different subjects, especially subjects that aren't typically traditionally offered in high school. That's what I did. I wanted to learn more about biomedical engineering. That's why I pursued a program in it. I think besides summer school, doing an internship is really recommended, particularly not your sophomore year, because I think you're too young at that point. Definitely junior year, if you could spend half your summer interning in something that you are really interested in. I was a teaching assistant for a writing program because I really do enjoy writing, and back at school I was involved in our humanities and writing center, so I wanted to continue that over the summer. And then I spent the other half doing college tours. But as Shreya earlier said, college tours tend to be a little controversial because they are very expensive, and it is a little unrealistic to go through like all of the colleges on your list. But I wanted to go experience the cities these colleges are in because I wanted to gauge like a good vibe and a good understanding of the city that I would potentially be living in for the next 4 years.
Thank you, Anya. So like, speaking of internships and summer schools and that kind of thing, how should I present my reflections on these kinds of experiences to college counselors to help them write a recommendation letter that will really stand out to college admissions officers?
So typically you ask two of your, I guess, not necessarily favorite, but you think the classes that you did the best in, and ask those teachers to write a recommendation for you when you're applying to college. And the key is to do that pretty early on, because usually the teachers get really busy around this time. And I think the best way to communicate all of your experiences and everything that you did over the summer would be to sit down with your teacher and to have a talk about what sort of things that you want the teacher to be able to convey through the recommendations, and what you think are key characteristics about your personality that you want reflected through this letter. So the best way to do that really is just to communicate to your teacher when you're trying to get them to write your recommendation.
Great, thank you so much. So Shreya, in terms of narrowing down that list of colleges that I want to apply to, what criteria did you use to create that shortlist, and what would be your recommendations for others?
So one thing I found really useful that not many people know about is this thing called a common data set, which is statistics given by every college about the students they admit. So they give like the 25th percentile and 75th percentile of the SAT and ACT scores. So it kind of is a really good indication of whether that college would be your reach or your safety. And then you can kind of like decide what you want as like your likely colleges, your dream school, or your safety schools. Also, I would say look at their academics, look at if they're famous for the subjects you intend to study. And also look at their general education requirements. For example, some schools like Columbia have really strict general education requirements, whereas schools like Brown have really relaxed general education requirements. We actually don't have any. Apart from academics, also look at things like the weather. So if you want to, like the location. So if you want to be in a cold climate or a warm climate, because it does affect a lot. Also look at things like the academic culture, like if students over there are very stressed out, or if it's like quite a relaxed culture.
Great, thank you so much. So Adrian, I have 8 months till the start of my senior year, if I was a junior in high school. What should I start thinking about now? So things like academics, extracurriculars, SATs, and essays. What would be your advice?
In terms of academics, definitely keep doing what you've been doing. It's really one of the most important semesters in terms of your college application and GPA. I'd say right now would be a decent time to start thinking about taking the SATs or ACTs, just because the rule of thumb is that you want to take it around twice. And times such as January before your senior year or around March will be when there's fewer people taking it, which makes it a lot easier to score a higher score. So right now would be a good time to think about it. In terms of extracurricular, definitely find what you're interested in and do that. Keep finding your passion, discover that, and just help builds you as a person, builds your character, but also helps with your college application. And in terms of college essay, like that really just ties into extracurricular. You definitely don't want to write something that's too textbook. So what I ended up doing was actually was a Starbucks barista the summer of junior year. And I thought about writing about that, and it just became too textbooky. It wasn't really good. I just ended up writing about hiking, and that was really something that I was passionate about, and that was something I discovered around junior year as well. And that got me somewhere, I guess.
Cool, wonderful. So I guess, why don't we just go around and share kind of the general topic of our college essays, in case that might be helpful to people trying to wrap their heads around encapsulating their life, essentially, for a college admissions officer. So Elaine, what was kind of the general topic of your college essay?
So I initially started out writing about I had one topic that I knew I wanted to avoid. And that was actually the topic that I ended up writing about, because apparently it evoked the most emotions. So everything else that I wrote wasn't as true to me as that topic was, but I almost didn't want to use it as if I was exploiting it. But I think at the end of the day, that was not a good mentality, because even though it was a topic that was very dear to me and something that I didn't really want to use to get me into like a school, it was one that reflected my character and reflected how I got to where I am the most. So if anyone is in like a similar circumstance, I really would just say to go for it, and to just put all of the doubts in terms of whether or not to use that as a story away, and to get into that good college.
I'm trying to think what exactly I wrote about, but it's been a while. I think I wrote about my experience as a teaching assistant, and just about teaching for the first time and having somebody looking up to you and having somebody trust what you're trying to tell them, and that is like a very big responsibility, especially for a 16-year-old. So I think that's what my college like the main essay was focused on.
Mine was kind of different. I didn't really focus on a specific topic, but I chose a piano piece I really like, and I kind of related the different sections of the piece to different parts of my life.
So like Shrey, I didn't choose a specific event or a thing to write about, but so when I was a kid, I used to play a lot with Legos with these things called connects, which is like these American building blocks that I've never seen anywhere else past like 6 years old. And I also used to read a lot of maps and play a lot with globes. So I talked about that, like how my childhood passions were these, and how kind of over the years they've still stuck with like building things. They've still stuck with like problem solving, with like reading things. But now I think by the time I applied to college, I realized that I think the best way to relate my childhood passions was through engineering, and I think that was that transition was the bulk of my essay.
Yeah, and from my part, I wanted to talk about my academic interests as well as my cultural background. So I basically wrote an essay about buttered chapatis, which is like a kind of unleavened Indian bread. So I connected that to my interest in economics with the range of bad puns and other such metaphors. I guess they liked it, but yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a risk. My counselor told me that the essay was either going to be loved or thrown out, and I was like, you know what, I'll go for it. But yeah, so that's what I did for mine. Okay, cool. So moving from there, we'll go on to seniors, who by now already sent out the vast majority of their college applications and are preparing to make that transition from high school to university. So, for those of us who are international students, Anya, what can the International Student Services Center do for you?
At BU, our office is called the International Students and Scholars Office, ISSO, and I normally go to them to better understand my visa and what I'm able to do on a international student visa. This means how many hours I'm able to work during the week, especially on-campus jobs, and what the requirements are for working in the States over the summers and how much time I will have after I graduate. So they're a really big help, and especially when I first got to campus freshman year, I didn't really understand what it meant to have a cap on how many hours I can work and the visa restrictions that come with being an international student, so they were very helpful.
Yeah, kind of just building on that, visa restrictions are very important, especially if you're, only if you're an international student, really. You can't take up, any kind of substantial employment off campus for sure. But on campus, you do have to speak to the international students office if you want to do, say, a research job or a teaching assistant job, just to make sure that you're staying within those visa regulations, because that can become a really big problem for you if you're not cognizant of those various restrictions. So Ben, how do I make friends? How is social life in college? I know that you're in a frat, so you might want to talk a bit about that, or how did you kind of integrate yourself into the Penn community?
Well, Josh, I'll give you my advice on how
Thank you. I'll need it.
No, I'm kidding. So I think just like it comes about naturally. Everyone is new to college. They're all on the same boat. So everyone is looking to make friends. At least in Penn, I found everyone was super friendly, super outgoing. So it was really easy to strike up a conversation with a lot of people in the first semester. But I think like most of my friends now, they've come about through first the people I live with, the people in my residential college in the first year, as well as some clubs I've joined. So I don't think it's a very challenging process, and I really just encourage it to go as naturally or the way you want it to.
Great, thank you. So Elaine, what kind of stuff should I prepare before going to college? So in terms of getting myself ready for academics, housing, campus, bank account, all the kind of like practical things that I need to keep in mind.
Okay, so for academics, actually I think a general rule of thumb is to arrive several days before the start of school, especially for international students. So for me, my international orientation was directly before the first day of school. And even then, I didn't find that as enough time for me to prepare for everything, because I did have activities going on during international orientation. So I think I would have really liked maybe like 3 days even before that, just to get settled. And so the first day doesn't feel as hectic and overwhelming as it probably is. For academics, I would recommend you look at what books you need to get in terms of textbooks and notebooks, pens, all the good stuff for the first day of school. Textbooks especially, because I remember being quite frazzled and not having the books that I needed for the first day of homework. And I was like a college student, like need to get everything set on time. And the library does have textbooks, so you could either Amazon or go to the library to buy those. But yeah, I would recommend you get those early for, well, credit cards, banking.
Banking. Definitely.
So I guess that would be like one of the, I think I would recommend setting up a bank account for sure, just to pay your bills and also to get a credit card so you can start building up your credit score for the future, and to get started on managing your own bills and stuff, because you're on your own, don't have your parents to do all that stuff for you.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, if you are applying to work on campus, you will need a social security number. If you're not an American, you'll have to go to the Social Security Administration to apply for one. Having done that, it's a bit of a pain. The American bureaucracy is not as efficient as Hong Kong's. But that's something to keep in mind if you want to work on campus.
Oh, another thing. I also needed to get there early because UVA has a huge campus and I was really lost my first week of school. I used Google Maps to get to my classes every single day. And so I think it's quite necessary to get there to kind of just walk through your first day of school, find the classroom, just so you know you won't be late.
So Adrian, at some stage, hopefully, we'll all be receiving our acceptance letters. What do you do once you see that acceptance letter? Suppose you have 3 or 4. How do you go about, figuring out the next step from there?
Are we assuming that we received all the acceptance letters? Or?
Yeah. So let's say let's move maybe 3 months in the future, or maybe you got in early.
Sure.
What's the next step?
I'd say really think about which college you want to go to. This might be a good time to visit a college if you haven't done so. One thing I've actually noticed is how important it is to understand a school's culture before getting into it. Just because fit is actually a huge thing when you get to college, because you're going to be in the same place for 4 years. And then after you choose the right college, the right one for you, then I'd say that semester is possibly the only semester you'll ever get to not focus as much on academics. And what I mean by that is really, even after you get a job in college, your college GPA follows you forever. Whenever you want to apply for a new job, it pops up right there the first time of your resume, right?
Never mind.
So I say it's a really good time to really keep looking for what you're interested in, discover your passion, read whatever book you really want to read but you couldn't in the past because of time issues, do whatever extracurricular activities you want to join on campus or off campus. I just really enjoy the last semester of high school and really bond with the friends, because it's really the last semester you ever spend time on campus, unless you go to the same school, obviously. But it's really one of the last semesters that you will spend with your friends.
Wonderful, thank you. So once that semester ends, Shreya, what should I do with the summer before I head off to college? Would you recommend doing another internship or just kind of taking it easy and relaxing?
So as it was just said, it is kind of like the last few months before college, and that's very intense. I personally didn't do anything in the summer before college. I kind of took it to relax because I did my IB exams right before summer started. But if you want to do an internship, definitely go ahead. If you know what you want to do, you can get an internship maybe in the field you're interested in. And if you don't know what to do, you can get some volunteer experience to pass your time. So I think it's really up to you. I don't think going anywhere hurt you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now we're going to kind of cycle back to the freshmen and the sophomores. I'm kind of thinking about how you should go about your high school career if you're just getting started. So back to you, Anya. So one of the critical things, I guess, going through high school and writing those essays eventually is improving your writing skills. So what would be your advice, to a freshman or sophomore who's struggling with writing or wants to get better with writing?
Honestly, my advice is what my writing mentor told me in middle school, and that is just to write every day. The more you write, the more practice you get, the more you get in touch with your own writing style and your voice when you're writing. So what I used to do was I would write every day in any which form, whether it's a journal entry, a diary entry if you're feeling a little bit more informal. I know my dad got into a mood where he would want me to read something in a newspaper and then write a quick summary about it, mostly to get me to read the newspaper. but I think just any form of writing every day gets you into that habit, and it just like slowly builds your confidence up, because then it's not something you're dreading or unsure like how to start. And especially once the college application process starts, you're writing like 2-3 essays per college, and if you aren't a writer and you're not really in like that practice or you're not used to it, it can feel a little daunting. So that's my best advice, just writing everything.
Yeah, and definitely, once you get to college as well, although in ninth grade you may get a month to write a paper, in college you usually get about 5 to 6 days. So having that kind of practice that Anya's talking about in terms of writing quickly and effectively will definitely be very advantageous. Okay, so Ben, some of us, are interested in going forward with our math and science skills, maybe showing them off to colleges. What kind of competitions would you recommend, or would you recommend doing competitions, especially in terms of math and science, where there are lots of opportunities to do things like, say, the AMC tests or the International Chemistry Olympiad?
Yeah, so I think definitely take the time first to consider yourself whether you think you have like a skill set you really want to showcase that may be very hard to do through just like normal classes or through club. I think competitions are where those really come in, are really useful. So in high school, I didn't go out of my way to participate in any of my competitions, but a few did come through, like the AP Chemistry and the AP Biology classes. I was able to do the United States Bio-Olympiad as well as the United States Chem Olympiad. And both of those I didn't really take extra time to prepare for. I didn't really take extra effort to want to do well in them. I just did them as part of like learning more outside of the class as well to supplement my learning in the class. And I definitely think you should consider doing it if you think you're really strong in that and want to perhaps like showcase it outside of class.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, just quickly, did many of us do competition math or competition science?
Yeah, I did the 36-hour math
competition. Okay, yeah, we did that as well.
The one where you get to sleep over.
Yeah. Forgot what that's called as well.
Yeah, it's a 36-hour continuous math modeling.
Math
modeling competition.
Yeah.
36-hour continuous.
Just
I guess
try to create a mathematical model related to some real life situation.
Yeah, get to form your own team.
We were on the same team.
All 4 years.
All 4 years. Yeah, we never did very well, but it was a bonding experience.
It's intellectually challenging.
Yeah.
And fun because you're with your friends at the same time.
Yeah, more of the fun. But it was definitely one of those experiences that was very kind of rigorous. It was definitely quite enjoyable. Yeah. Okay. So, Elaine, back to you. So we asked you earlier about developing leadership, and you spoke about Z Club. So if I'm thinking of doing service activities, how would you recommend I go about that? Not just doing going to some foreign country and helping an orphan once, but how do you do meaningful service that is good for your own personal growth as well?
So once again, I would definitely reiterate on the main thing of interest. I wouldn't do something if you're truly not interested in it. And being passionate in something, I think, corresponds to also committing more time and then more commitment, and that leads to kind of more of a long-term connection with whatever service opportunity that is. So in HKIS, for example, we have career or club fairs where you get to see what each club is about, and from that you can kind of gauge where your interests lie in terms of which clubs you would want to join, and then it's usually a year-long thing, but you would continue to be part of that club if it's something you're interested in. So it wouldn't be like a one-time visit a country, help an orphan sort of thing. It would be like a continuous journey that's kind of for the betterment of both us and the person that you're helping.
Great, thank you. So Adrian, how do I develop relationships with my teachers, so that they can help me kind of write good, or rather not help me write good recommendations, but so that they can write recommendations that will be strong and that will help me stand out to colleges?
That's a very, very good question. When I was in high school, I was a terrible student. I was really that kid that was really disruptive in class. But it was really, really obvious to the teachers when I was actually interested in the subject because of that, because I just wasn't really quiet, or just I was never just a kid that sits in the classroom and do nothing. So I think in that sense, teachers really knew what I was interested in. And on top of that, because I went to boarding school, faculty actually lived on campus. And of course, given how disruptive I was in class, I always got in trouble and I had to sweep the grass or just sweep all the leaves around the dorm areas and do all those chores. But there was always that supervising faculty. And through those experiences, 3 hours a weekend.
So strategic.
So the tip here is get attention with good faculty.
No, but it was definitely spending time also outside of the classroom. It doesn't have to be any sort of outdoor activity, obviously, but actually do something outside the classroom. Maybe talk to them during office hours. If you're interested in something, definitely talk to them. So in that case, they know what you're interested in, but at the same time, they also know you better as a person. And the combination of those two really helps give a better impression of who you are as a person, of like at the end, a better recommendation as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, just to add on a bit of my own experience as well at HKIS, like teachers didn't have official office hours that they have had at some schools, but if you went after school to speak with teachers, they were always more than happy to just sit down with you and have a conversation. And the two teachers that wrote my letters of recommendation eventually were teachers that I very often approached after school to talk just about life, about class, anything really. So teachers are people, and take advantage of the opportunity to really get to know them as such. All right, so Shreya, you spoke earlier about gathering information about universities. In terms of kind of aligning my interests with kind of what a university may be strong in, how do I go about finding that interest of mine, especially so early in high school?
So I would say definitely don't do things you think will just look good to universities, because the admissions, people in admissions will be able to see right through that. So I would say when you're young, if you know what you're passionate in, for me it was music, just join a bunch of clubs and continue those clubs for the duration of high school, so you can really develop your position in the club and hopefully get to a leadership position. And if you're not completely sure about what you're interested in just yet, a way to do that would be to approach this would be to join a bunch of clubs that you think you may be interested in, and perhaps drop the clubs that you're not as interested in and continue the ones that you like.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so that kind of wraps up the next round of questions for freshmen and sophomores. So moving back to juniors who are just about getting started on this college applications process. Could you tell us more, Lane, about kind of the difference between early action, early decision, and regular admissions? And even within early action, they're not variants like single choice early action or early action 2. I can talk more about that as well. But yeah, maybe just that basic distinction. Do I stand a better chance?
Yeah, okay. Not quite familiar with the newer types of distinctions in early action. But I guess the basic difference between early action and early decision is that both are early, as it implies, but the difference is that for ED, the decision is binding. So once the university accepts you, you have to go. And you really, really should not renege. And for early action, you don't have to go, but you still get the decision early. So you'll be able to know before most regular decision dates whether you've gotten into the college or not. In terms of whether you stand a better chance, while there might be some statistical evidence that you do stand a better chance with ED, since colleges do once they accept a student, they do want the student to come to the university. So that might give you a better chance, but I also wouldn't bank on that. It's just sort of, you should still apply to the schools that you want to apply to and apply to the schools that you think are suited for you, no matter whether or not there's an added possibility that you would get in. Yeah.
And how early is early?
So I think they usually come out around November or December, while regular decisions come out around April, if memory is correct.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
Right. So did you apply early yourself?
Yeah, so I did apply ED and EA. For me, I applied ED and then I was deferred, which just means that your decision date gets moved back to regular decision. And for early action, I chose a safety school To be honest, if I could go back, I probably would have applied to UVA early action instead. I applied to a safety school just so I knew that there was like a safety net, but then at the same time, I probably would have gotten it anyway, regular, so kind of a lose.
That's fair. So I guess, did any of us, apply early aside from Elaine? And, we did want to talk about experiences, yeah.
Well, I'd say doing early decision is an early action is just really a good way to enter the process a little earlier. And I do agree with Elaine that it is slightly easier to get an ED, but at the same time, don't let that stop you from your reach. That should be your silver bullet to get into your reach school. Other than that, I mean, Elaine basically covered. Yeah, I did apply ED to Pomona.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so just a bit more on the EA-ED thing. So some schools do have slight variations on it. So I applied early to Harvard, and Harvard has a restrictive early action program, which meant that I could apply early only to Harvard, but that if I got in, I didn't have to go. So I did want to go, and so when I got in, I decided to take that offer. But that's something else to look into as well. The difference between early action that's non-restrictive and early action that is restrictive. Because with non-restrictive early action, you're free to apply early decision as well, whereas I was not free to apply ED under Harvard's REA program. Some schools have also a second round of early action, so U Chicago has this as well, where it's like kind of later than the first early action round, but still earlier than the regular decision round. So there are all sorts of nuances that go into this, and I would highly recommend kind of looking into each university's policies with regards to that. And in terms of admissions benefits, as we've heard, applying early decision does give you a slight edge because you've basically told the college that you will accept their offer if you receive it. Applying early action, it's a bit of a mixed bag. With the most competitive schools, it can be a slight disadvantage, despite what the statistics show. Because early action applicants at those schools tend to be legacies and athletes. So at Harvard, for example, although the early admissions rate is 3 times the regular admissions rate, the actual difficulty of getting in is pretty much the same because like all the legacies and athletes apply early and they have like 100% admission, or not for legacies have like 30%, but athletes have 100%. So you want to keep that in mind. Just because the number looks higher doesn't mean it's actually easier to get. All right, so that's the spiel on early action, early decision. You'll definitely be hearing more about it from your counselors as time goes by. Okay, so we've just got a couple more questions, in terms of juniors left. So Shreya, how strenuous is the college applications process, and how much time should I set aside for it over the coming summer and beyond?
So initially, when looking at the word count for college essays, I thought it wouldn't be that bad. However, with the US application process, I would say a lot of time goes into thinking about what would be the best answer to give in the essays. And because I did the IB curriculum, my senior year was actually quite strenuous. So I tried to make use of the summer before senior year as much as possible. So I would definitely recommend having, a draft of your personal essay done before senior year begins. And apart from that, having a basic plan of at least your early action or early decision colleges before senior year begins as well. And definitely, make use of your school's counselors. If you have a really good relationship with them, they'll be happy to, check your essays before you submit them and give really constructive criticism.
Cool. Anya, do you want to talk about maybe your college applications process and how compared to Shreya's?
I definitely started the summer before my senior year as well. I think the essay questions are released sometime in June. So I think it's worthwhile spending at least like a couple of weeks thinking about which essay question you really want to focus on. You can brainstorm a little, see which experiences you can focus on, talk about, that sort of thing. Because senior year GPA still matters, especially for regular decision applications, so you can't really slump on your grades. So you're still going to be super busy, super stressed. So I think getting a head start in the summer is a very good idea, and especially if you're not really doing anything the summer before, you can spend a lot of time just working on those essay questions.
Great, thank you so much. So we'll move back now to the seniors as they prepare to make that transition. Ben, how rigorous was your first year of study. So, did high school prepare you well for university? Did you require like academic support? What kind of academic support is available? And how do you kind of go about that transition from the academics of high school to the academics of somewhere rigorous like you have?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think HKIS did a very good job of preparing me for college. But that being said, I think college is also very rigorous. Like it was definitely more work in terms of hours than in high school. Something I used a lot in my first year of college was talking with the TAs, the teaching assistants, in all of my large lecture classes. So the TAs are usually undergraduates or graduate students that work alongside with the professor, and sometimes they even teach sections outside of the large lectures. And I went to them a lot because, first of all, it was also their jobs, they were getting paid for it, and second of all, most of them had gone through the same classes, and they knew like firsthand a lot of the experiences, they had experience with the classes that they were all teaching. So that was definitely a super great useful resource that I used a lot in my first year of college.
Great, thank you. And I guess, just kind of building off that, how did you find the transition from the smaller classes at HKIS, where there were around 18 to 20 people, to some of the larger classes of college? How large was your average class? What was that like shifting?
Yeah, definitely was a huge difference. My largest class was around 150 to 200 students, which I hear is like not even that large compared to some other colleges. But it's definitely a huge difference because in HKIS, I felt like I had a really personal connection with all of my teachers in the small classes. Whereas in a large lecture of like 200 people, first of all, I felt really lucky if the professor knew my name. Second of all, there would be so many students approaching the professor after class that often it was just not worth the time to wait around. So I think in those large classes, the biggest motivation for me to do well was finding a group of friends or a group of collaborators who shared similar academic goals, and we would just work on homework together, and I would bounce some questions anytime I had any. They would do the same for me, and that was a really good source of motivation, making sure that I was keeping up with the class.
Yeah, no, you're definitely really lucky if your largest class was 150 or so. This past semester, I took a class with 800 people. I saw the professor after the final, said hi to him, and he had no idea who I was. Like, there was not a flash of recognition on his face. So that's definitely something to get used to, especially if you're studying a major that a lot of people do, like math and economics, for example, which is very, very popular. Great, so thank you, Ben. Anya, so just kind of in terms, again, for the parents, I guess, how safe is campus, and how much of a concern should campus safety be?
Honestly, yeah, no, safety was a very big concern for my parents, especially my dad. And one of the things that I love most about BU is how safe it is. I think a lot of parents, as they tour college campuses, will notice that most campuses have those blue lights, which light up at night, and those are sort of the safety poles. So God forbid if something bad happens or if you're feeling unsafe, you can press the button and campus security will come right to where you are and escort you back to your dorm. And I sort of gauged how safe a campus is, or rather my dad gauged how safe a campus is basis off of how many of those blue lights there were. And BU has like 3, or I've like counted 3. So it is very safe in regards to that. And also our campus is a city campus. It's like a 2-mile stretch. It's just like a very long line. So there is a lot of like traffic flow. A lot of like local Boston residents always walk on campus. And I do live quite far away from our library, but there's never been a time where I felt unsafe walking back, especially at night. And so I definitely recommend it, like 10 out of 10, very safe. My dad's very happy. If he wasn't, I wouldn't be attending BU.
Yeah, I mean, and another thing to note on that safety is that most colleges actually have their own campus police service. I know BU has its own, and so do we. I think actually everyone's campus has its own security force. So that's something that actually I didn't expect. A lot of people don't realize that the campus's safety is quite well taken care of insofar as it's a dedicated police force for the campus. And safety is usually not a huge issue.
I know. Actually, to build on that, I think a lot of colleges have their own sort of student patrolling service that happens like towards like nighttime.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like you want to walk back alone, you could always call someone. At BU, we have something called Scarlet Safety Walk. So they give you the numbers and they make you save them during your orientation. So you can call someone if you ever feel unsafe if you're walking back alone.
Yeah, we have like an evening van service
Yeah,
Mhm.
same.
that just picks you up wherever you are and takes you to your room. Yeah, so yeah, there you
One
go.
speed dial.
Very safe. Yeah, it really is a free Uber. Okay, so Elaine, looking back to your freshman year, I know it's quite a long way back now. Is there anything that you would have done differently, or you changed?
I think I already mentioned this, but I definitely would have arrived several days earlier because I really was one of those students that was lost and like went to class late because I couldn't find the room. And I was HKIS is pretty small and like in a very closed campus, and UVA is very, very big. So using Google Maps still took me like a good 15 minutes to get to class. And when I'm in the building's also like a maze, and finding room like 101 out of 500 rooms was just, yeah. So I really would have taken more time to get to every class and like make sure I know where it is, have like a mental map so I'm not as nervous and anxious on like that first week to get to class on time and don't have to be like that one student that walks in while the professor's talking. So yeah, that's something that I think I would have done differently.
All right, great. So Adrian, in terms of getting involved on campus, are there any clubs that you would recommend I join, or are you in a fraternity, and kind of what's your take on that in terms of the Greek life, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah.
So Pomona College actually does not have a Greek life, and there's just some merit to it in the sense that it's more inclusive. There are a lot of support programs around campus. They put you in a couple of them the moment you start on campus, so it's a lot easier to make friends. In terms of what clubs to join whatever you're interested in. I started working at a restaurant. I was a cook, and then I was also part of like a finance club. I wrote for the student news on the Senate. Just do whatever you want. Try as many things as you can, and you might stumble on something that you might want to do in the long run as well.
Cool, great, thank you. So before I head off to college, Shreya, are there any kind of simple life skills that I should acquire? This might still be relevant for some of us.
I would definitely recommend learning how to do laundry, because doing laundry outside of college is not recommended. It's really expensive and no one ever does it. And all colleges have laundry machines. So yeah, definitely learn how to do laundry. It's not that hard. In terms of cooking, I would say it really depends on which university you go to. So if you're going to the US and you have a university with a meal plan, if it's not too expensive, then I would say go with the meal plan. It's very convenient. If it is expensive, if you think you would do better without it, then yeah, learn cooking. Also, if your residence hall, look at your residence hall, because some residence halls have really good cooking facilities if you want to cook, whereas some don't. For example, my current residence hall, we have one kitchen for the entire hall, and that's definitely not enough if I wanted to cook. And also, if you choose to go to the UK instead of the US, UK colleges rarely offer meal plans. So they will either provide only lunch or only dinner or nothing at all. So if you're going to the UK, I would highly recommend learning to cook.
Great, thank you. So now on to our final round of questions for freshmen and sophomores. So we'll begin with Anya. What do I need to know now as a freshman or sophomore to begin planning for the college process? Or should I just kind of take it easy? Where's the balance?
I think if your parents are watching this, I don't think you're really going to take it easy for your college process. And honestly, I don't think it's ever a bad thing to start early. I think you should start thinking about what type of college you want to go to. Do you want to go to a more smaller, secluded college, more liberal arts? Do you want to go to a larger university where there are different opportunities available? I think start looking into, are you more humanities oriented or are you more math and science oriented? Because that indication will sort of lead you towards which advanced placement courses to take later on in high school, which is very important as well. I think when I was a freshman, I started making my list of colleges which I wanted to apply for, and that was obviously like 30 different schools, which I had to narrow down to around 10. And so just think about those bigger things, like which campus looks nice, which campus can you picture yourself in, which cities look pleasant to live in, where is the weather nice, stuff like that.
Great. So Adrian, in terms of getting ready for that first SAT or ACT, when should I start preparing? You mentioned earlier that you should maybe start thinking of doing it second semester junior year, but how long do I need to prepare, and what kind of test prep do I need?
That's a very good question, and I'd say it's very different from person to person. For me, I did a month of SAT camp, so it was three times a week, 2 hours per day, and then just really doing a lot of practices. And then got back on campus. I did a mock test every single weekend, and then took the test in January. But I also know people who self-studied. I also know people who just kind of crammed the last 3 weeks of school. So it really depends on your study style and what works for you. But yeah, that's what I did.
Cool, great, that's wonderful. So yeah, does anyone else have any tips in particular in terms of how early to get started with that test prep process? Is the SAT kind of typical experience, or were there other things that people did?
I feel like consistency and practice and going through the actual 4 hours is probably the best way to get, it's not enough to do sporadic SAT tests. You really have to sit down and go through the whole thing, and to as much as you don't want to, just do it over and over again. And if you do that, I don't really think you need that much more outside of it.
I would say really think about if you want to do the SAT or the ACT. It's a really important choice, because I initially chose the SAT and ended up switching to the ACT. So yeah.
And also some advice I have is since there's multiple sections of the SAT and the ACT, do a practice first, like Elaine said, and then really try to figure out which sections you think you want more help in, which sections you think you're really strong in. So for example, when I took it, I found that the grammar and the math sections were pretty easy in my opinion. So I spent the bulk of my time just focusing on patching up my reading, my vocabulary for the SAT and the ACT.
And note also that there are lots of resources available online, through Khan Academy or through the College Board.
Or even MAST.
Or even MAST, yeah, putting in that plug. They're very helpful. They're very helpful for preparing for the SAT. All right, so I guess for our final kind of question in this set of questions for freshmen and sophomores, Shreya, are there any suggestions you have on how to improve our study habits? And I think we'll go around with this one because this is an important one. How do we improve our study habits, time management, setting goals and priorities?
What I did in high school is that I kind of had a bullet journal, so I would plan out my day and kind of plan out what I would do at different times of the day. Now, what I would say is what I find most useful is to have a calendar and to kind of put my work, have a calendar that shows my entire week, and then plan out what I'm doing at different parts of the day. Because I think it's a really good way if you color code it to see, how much time you're working, how much time you're spending with your friends. And yeah, I think it's a really good way to organize your days.
Yeah, I think something super important is to know what type of environment you work most productively in. So for example, I noticed around my sophomore year when I was working at home, I always got super distracted because the TV was on. I could watch TV in my bed, which was super close. So it was kind of hard to get a lot of work done at home. So what I started doing was I started going to the Hong Kong Public Library. There was one near my home in Wan Chai, and that's where I found that I was super productive, and I really enjoyed finding that and discovering that.
For me, I credit a lot of my high school success to an application called I Procrastinate, which sadly no longer exists, but it doesn't really sad. It basically just allows you to create different tabs for all of your classes, and then create your assignments, and then create sub tasks for those assignments, what you have to do to complete that assignment, and then the due date and stuff like that. And after that application ended, I started just doing it myself on a Word document, just listing everything out and just doing daily lists. And that really helped me because I think getting everything laid out and seeing what you need to accomplish just really drives you to get it done, and it helps you sort of take it piece by piece as well.
Yeah, I actually used Procrastinate as well. sad that it no longer exists. In terms of time management, the thing that I used the most was this Excel spreadsheet where I divided columns by classes and extracurriculars, and then the rows were days. And I still have this for college. I can basically log how much time I'm spending on each thing each day, and how much sleep I'm getting, and other life stuff, whether I worked out or not. I think basically the idea of this, it sounds a bit strange, I know, but it just keep myself accountable, so that you often feel like you're doing a lot of work, or you feel like you've worked out 5 times in the past week, and then it turns out you did half an hour of work and it didn't work out at all. So I think the great thing about having that kind of spreadsheet is that spreadsheets don't lie to you, and you can see that you did 3.6 hours of math last week, and that's why you did do all your tests. So yeah, that's one way to do it, I guess, if you're into spreadsheets. Or Elaine, what did you do?
For me, I used planners in high school, and I still do that. I still use them now. So it's pretty much the same thing that Anya does, except written, and simply because I think it's extremely satisfying to check off something when you're done with it. So HKIS gave you these planners to write down what assignments you had for each day, and I do the same in college, and this pertains more for seniors, but in the beginning of class, your professor hands you a syllabus. The first thing I do after the first day of class is to write down every assignment I have for the rest of the semester, and exam, midterms and finals, just so I know when they are and how to space out my time. So that's really been my finding.
Yeah, I think most of the things I did has already been covered, but I'd say going into high school, the hardest things for me was learning how to study, just because everyone learns at a different pace through different methods. So trying to figure out what worked for me and what didn't took me a while. So I'd say take your time in high school to figure that out, just because in college you don't actually have much time to do so. That's all I have to add.
Great, thanks so much. So that more or less wraps up all our questions. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you as well to all the panelists for answering all the questions. We hope this was helpful to all the parents and students out there watching, and thank you again for joining us. Oh yeah, okay. So are there any, if there are any questions, we'd love to answer them. Send them along to Michael.
You can just type it.
Okay, you can type it in the chat. Sorry, I can't see that interface, but yeah, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type that into the chat. We'd love to answer them.
It's not working. It's terrible.
I mean, gold.
Okay, we actually do have a question. And the question is, how many extracurricular activities does one need?
All right, anyone want to take that? Okay, I'll take a stab at it. I think it's not really, there's not a minimum or maximum number, really. I would note that, if you're planning on doing 25, the Common App only has space for 10. So that's kind of the upper bound in terms of your college application. But I will note that, when you get in to some colleges, they'll write you a short letter. I got a note from Harvard where they told me why they admitted me. They really only referenced my top 4 extracurriculars. And I think that's a decent rule of thumb. The 4 or 5 most significant things you did in high school probably was going to stick.
I think, sorry. I also think the quality in terms of your leadership role, in terms of how involved you are in that extracurricular activity, matters more than the number in terms of how many things you're involved in.
Yeah, that's just really building off what Elaine just said. Having a lot can also mean that you're not doing a lot for each of them. It can also mean that you're not focusing a lot of energy into each of them. So definitely choose, I'd say 3, 4, 5, or 6 of them is enough. Yeah, enough for you to actually be interested in it, put a lot of energy in it, and actually do well in each of them, right? Because there's no point if you're just gonna be a member but not contribute to a dozen different extracurricular activities.
What I did is I used up all 10 of the slots, but realistically, like I only really put a lot of effort into maybe half of them, and the rest were kind of to show like, oh, I have other interests, but I'm not as involved in these activities.
Same.
Yeah, I think my opinion is like from a college admissions type of standpoint, like if you try to look at someone who's done like 10 activities in like a bunch of different fields, it's kind of hard to piece together like why did this person do like 10 instead of concentrating in something like he or she is really interested in it.
Yeah, so for sure. I mean, there are many, many paths to take, but I think it's just about, as Ben said, having that kind of like coherent story where it's very clear why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay. The next question is, what made you realize that you wanted to go to that specific college or university?
So for me, I found the college because I was skateboarding from my high school to this kind of downtown area of that cute little town. I got lost and just sort of skidded past my college. I thought it was a beautiful place because there was like this Greekish building with like a really nice lawn. That's how I found it. And I really fell in love with how beautiful it is. The weather's amazing too. I'm in California. So that's how I just kind of got into it.
Yeah, I think I didn't get a chance to skateboard and find my college. But I'm really happy with where I'm at right now at Penn 2. When I was applying, I kind of looked at my list of schools and I told myself, like, if I get into any of these 10 schools, I will be more than happy to go to them. And Penn just happened to be one of them. I got in and I thought, wow, okay, I think I'm really excited to go.
What really drew me to Brown was its open curriculum, because in high school I hated having to take classes I wasn't as interested in. So Brown is really unique in the fact that they don't have any requirements, so I can basically take whatever classes I want to take, and I know that I'm going to be interested in all of them.
I chose BU because of my major. So I applied for biomedical engineering, and it was a top 10 like ranked program, and I know that they were putting a lot of funding into the research and into their BME department, so I really wanted to be a part of that. And Boston, my mom really liked it because there's a direct flight, so that was very important. And I think just growing up in Hong Kong, I couldn't really see myself in a very small suburb or a small city in the US, so I really went with where I wanted to live and where I knew that I would be able to settle down pretty well.
Yeah, with Harvard, like I kind of wanted to go there for many, many years. And I always also wanted to study economics, and Harvard is a very strong economics department. And yeah, I was also kind of drawn to like the strength of the student body in terms of there's kind of a real diversity of the kinds of students you get at Harvard. It's not just all engineers or all computer scientists or all like literature majors. You get a very broad range of people, very broad range of experiences, and like really world-class faculty. And when I went and visited it, like much like Anya, I couldn't imagine myself staying somewhere tiny and isolated. And I liked how Harvard was like 10 minutes away from the big city, also having that kind of like college town feel.
So initially, I wasn't too sure about, or I like really didn't know much about UVA when I had applied. But I started looking more into it after I got in and started talking to more people, alumni, and people who are working in law firms in Hong Kong now that graduated from UVA, who actually did like 8+ years at UVA from undergrad and then a JD MBA program because he loved it there so much. But initially I was kind of like, where is Virginia? And then after I talked to a lot of people about the school, I was really surprised by how much each person had to say, despite the fact that, some people would be like, but it's in a suburb, but it's kind of not in a city. And to be honest, I think that's what I love the most about it, that it's so different from where I grew up, and that I get a chance to experience this kind of community, this tight-knit spirit that UVA just has. And whenever someone talks about UVA, I found it to be extremely different from other people talking about the other schools that I was looking at. And it was just this kind of like excitement that they were exuding, that they like really wanted you to also love UVA the way that I like kind of want everyone here to feel the same way that I do. So that's ultimately what drew me to UVA.
All right, so we actually have a couple more questions. So I'll just, we'll move on to the next one. It's, how can you study efficiently?
Great question.
So, I mean,
Work smart.
use a spreadsheet. No. I found that like one other thing that's really helped me, especially actually even more so in college, where there are like 10 times as many distractions as there are in high school, is like take out your phone and like set a timer for like 20 or 25 minutes, and just like not do anything else but study for those 20 or 25 minutes. And that may not sound like much, just studying for 25 minutes, but you'd be surprised to like know how powerful it is to just do one thing for 20 or 25 minutes. Like, don't even like change tabs, don't look at your phone, nothing. And then like the alarm goes off, spend 5 minutes to like do whatever you want, be completely unfocused, and then just get back into it. Like, it's very hard for your brain to focus on one thing for more than like half an hour, and especially like, us modern kids have so many distractions, our attention span is really short. But if you can get like 20 uninterrupted minutes in, I think that's fantastic.
The next question is, what's your advice for parents on how to support their kids?
I think that's kind of already like said, right? Like just support them in their decision. Whatever. I think what I'm most grateful for in terms of my parents is that they understand that I probably know a lot about these processes more than they do, and so they trust me enough to know that I will figure out my own path, and that I have things that I'll like that they won't understand, but that it works for me, and because it works for me, then they support me. And I think that's ultimately like what gives me the most comfort when I'm taking risks or when I'm not doing as well as I hoped, just to know that they're there, even if it might not turn out the way that I initially planned it to. Yeah, it's already a great comfort.
I'd say add something to it is that I know it's very hard to trust your kid to do whatever he or she wants to do. It was especially hard for my dad as well to do so. But it is very important as well, I think, from personal experience for your kid to learn to be independent, to find their own interests and do something that's genuinely themselves, right? So trust your kid, take a leap of faith, and see what happens.
It'll work out.
It'll work out, 100%.
All right, next question is there a difference between the kind of clubs you joined in high school versus college? What are the differences? Why aren't you continuing some activities, and why'd you pick others up?
Yeah, so I think I can speak a bit about that. In high school, I was involved a lot with like leadership sort of clubs. I was involved with the student government, with MUN, with our school's ambassador board. And in college, I'm more involved in like clubs that have to do with engineering. For example, in my first year, I was involved with our Penn Electric Racing Club, which is we build a race car every single year, and we race it in the annual Formula Electric inter-college competition, which is something that's very different from like high school government or MUN, I guess. And I think the biggest reason for me to like perhaps like change or transition clubs was in high school there weren't as many opportunities to get involved with a lot of science and technology clubs in Hong Kong. And in college there simply were, and those aligned more with my long-term interests with what I'm studying in engineering. So I think that's like where the transition came about.
Did anyone else kind of significantly change?
Yeah, I guess my clubs right now are very different from my high school clubs. So in high school, I mostly focused on my interest in music, whereas in college, for some reason, I feel like there were more opportunities for me to explore my interests in high school than there are in college. And in college, I'm mostly focusing on my academic interests. So I'm in investment clubs or biology-focused clubs.
I actually kind of stayed relatively similar between high school and college. I thought I wouldn't. Like I did a lot of debate in high school, like tons, and I was like, I'm not going to debate at Harvard. And then I realized that I really missed debating somehow, and all my friends were also on the debate team, so I joined the debate team. My second semester, I did do MUN, and then I realized that I really loved MUN, and I kind of stuck with MUN. But I added on a couple other things. So, in high school, I found I had less time to do stuff just for like the fun of it. Whereas in college, I've definitely done, some clubs just for the sake of it, like the Symphony Society, where you just like dress up in a suit and have a fancy dinner and watch the Boston Symphony Orchestra play for free, and that's a club. And then also this like Indian dance show called Guru, where you dance like you see in Bollywood movies, and that's something I'm not very good at, but it's fun. And I think college just gives you that kind of latitude to do random fun stuff. Like I joined the club squash team who never played squash before. But, I was like, why not? And I think I totally encourage you to like take some of those opportunities. Because when else are you going to do it?
All right. Are there any other questions from parents or students? If not, then I guess we'll call it a day. Thank you very much for attending the webinar session. We really appreciate the support. And thank you all, especially our tutors who attended today and spoke. Hopefully all your parents and students got some good out of this. If you do have any other questions, feel free to message any member of the MAST team and we can pass it on to the tutors. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.